Hi, happy Friday. We were already saying how fun this is because we're both sitting here. It's really nice to be with another person. And so I have to introduce Amy to you. Amy is the newest member of our team. She is a physical therapist with a lot of neuro background and getting into the swing of things with reactive just last week. Yeah. So that's been really fun. And Amy and I are actually finishing up orientation today. Yes. And I was like, just join me, no big deal. Join me on this live video because it's National PT Month, October every year. And one of the things that we wanted to do today is actually give a little recap of the course that we did this weekend. And Amy was a big part of the course, actually. It was really nice to have you there. It's a great way to be introduced to reactive, is to take a weekend course with us. And if you are new to reactive, we are an outpatient neurologic physical therapy, occupational therapy, yoga therapy, and fitness facility in the LA area. We actually have 2 locations. And our mission is to really help people with neurologic disorders get their lives back, keep their lives going, but get that confidence, movement, strength, and do that in ways that are actually changing the brain. And we talked a lot in this course about changing the brain and how we do that in 2 particular disorders, which are actually very rare, but because we see a lot of rare things, we see a lot of them, and that's focal dystonia and CRPS. And I know last week I was on here and just really excited because the course was coming up. And now I feel like I've been on cloud 9 because we finished the course, and doing a course is always a lot of work. But also just, it was really fun. And
good course.
It was a really good course, and we had really great people, like both online and in person, and it was just fun to have both of those interactions.
Yeah, and great cases.
Really good cases that
really
people submitted. And so we got to talk about their patients and those cases. And that's actually something I want to talk about today when we talk of our recap. I think that's a really powerful way to learn and grow is, was for me, like, these weren't my cases that people submitted. These were other cases from across the country, even across the world, actually, where really complicated things, actually. Yeah. So it was really neat. So we had a group of 20 people in person, online. That's the first time we've done that too, where it's at the same time. And it was really fun to get to know the people who joined us online live. We also had people who were purchasing the recorded course and submitted cases and questions ahead of time. So that was kind of fun too, thinking ahead of like, okay, this is, so-and-so's case, and I want to make sure that we address this as we record it, and find little snippets of it throughout the recorded course. So today, as we talk about the recap, we're going to talk about the 2 days. So it was a Saturday, Sunday course. We'll talk about some of the key take-home points from that, some of the great discussion we had with the cases, and especially, this was my take-home, was the pie chart. And so I think I brought this up last week too, because I printed it out, but I really want to share with this because I think it really helps solidify some of the concepts of the course, and then also just talk about some of the ways we made it real to practice it.
Yeah.
And I know I personally love the thoracic manipulation.
Yeah.
And having everybody practice, it was like being back in PT school, right?
Exactly.
So let's just go through a little bit what we covered in this course. So the first day we talked about the shared pathophysiology of CRPS and focal dystonia. And I think one of the highlights of the day was actually having the physicians talk from their perspective of the diagnosis, the management involved, all the systems that are involved, especially in CRPS. Yeah. Actually, one of the physicians, this was so great, he even created a little game for us to play of like, is this dystonia or not? Like, wasn't that fun?
He's so great.
He was so creative. Alan Wu, if you get to see him talk or go to a course, he was really phenomenal, got us all really engaged. we had an interesting discussion about ketamine too in the treatment of CRPS.
Yes.
And I particular have seen like billboards on ketamine treatment, and it kind of was like skeptical.
Like ketamine spas.
Yes. Yeah, and that made me skeptical. And I think having this physician with a lot of experience in it really drove home some of the benefits of treatment with ketamine.
If it's done well and in the right place with the right safeguards.
Yes, that was the take home. Like a lot of safety involved with using that medication in CRPS. I loved having the discussion roundtable so we could present cases. So we had a case submitted where the person had DBS and this kind of moving dystonia, and it was really nice to have Alamu's perspective of like, well, is that dystonia? And you know what? That person probably needs to stop messing with their DBS. Yes. And it was like having a consult, honestly, with him, which was really nice. And anything else from when the physicians presented?
I just thought it was really interesting to hear like their perspective of the medical management, and then how the medicine and how our patients are being treated medically is going to affect them in the clinic. So it just, I think that they also see very severe forms of both dystonia and CRPS. We may get a spectrum. So we may even have better goals and better outcomes that they would even expect. And I remember a discussion with Dr. Blue about that too.
Yes, that's true, because he actually made a statement of like, I don't know if people get better. And we were like, well, what about this case where it totally went away? And he's like, oh yeah, what about that case?
Yeah.
So that was a really good point, was like, for some of the more medically complex patients that may not be getting better, they're going to get more medical management.
Right.
And I think it was a good, what a great discussion to be able to have with the physicians go, actually, when we see this and we can do this, they can get better.
Right.
Not everybody, not 100%, but people with dystonia get better. So I forgot about that conversation. It was really great. I think one of my favorite parts was the patient cases that people submitted and practicing some of the techniques. And you brought up a really good point. We actually did this in a group. And one of the things somebody said was like, you know what? It didn't feel like we were pretending, like in PT school, we were actually doing it. And you mentioned this as well, Amy, that doing the pie chart like you were the patient. And let me actually pull that one up. I brought this up yesterday. So we actually had a lot of activity around how we educate and talk about the different diagnoses and what our approach is. And I love this activity. And what we did it in the group. Like for me, I have had thoracic outlet syndrome. And so then I would fill out the pie chart and go, well, part of that is my nervous system. Part of it might be my tissues. I have some tightness here in my pec. A big part of it is like my life. I get really stressed when I start teaching. And then, maybe my chair is contributing to my posture. And I would fill out this pie chart for myself. And we did an activity practicing that and seeing then from the patient perspective what they view is happening.
And then we could jump in if we see that our pie chart for them is pretty significantly different than theirs. It could really open the door for some great education and kind of helping guide their treatment as well.
And so this was really fun because Saida, I'm gonna call you out here, but she was at the course, had a really interesting case that she submitted. And we have a private group for people who are part of our education modules. And within that group, you can submit the cases. And so she, the very next day, like posted his pie chart and says, here's what he thinks. And it was really interesting what he perceived was happening. Another thing that she did, and this was part of the day one, we talked about assessments according to the pie chart. So looking at sensory systems, motor control, the underlying physical limitations, autonomic and psychosocial. Sensory was one area that she hadn't done as much testing, and then she went back and did it on Monday, and lo and behold, he had these huge changes in 2-point discrimination in his back, and he had a dystonia affecting his trunk. So that was really cool to see both of those applications. So testing sensation right away, seeing a change, and then, you know, that was the great thing about the pie chart, and this brings us into day 2, is then it took you right into treatment. So she then tested it and go, whoa, sensation is off. Now let's try to redo the sensory map of the trunk, right? Which is, that's like a big piece of your body.
Yeah.
So, no small task. So now she can start that sensory training, which is a big piece of what we did on Sunday, was kind of creative ways to do sensory training that were very practical and purposeful. So we talked not just like you're brushing randomly the skin, but making it relatable to, like in the CRPS case, the goal was a pedicure.
Yeah.
And so we had everybody kind of plan a treatment for graded exposure to get the pedicure. And I think you guys had some fun things.
There were some really fun ideas. Somebody mentioned like feet in Jello and just going really creative, kind of kooky. You had a fun like kooky phrase for like who can come up with.
Oh yes, it was
treatments.
like wacky wins or something like that. Yeah, so there was like Jello involved, so different like textures and like massage chairs, like the spa, getting your nails done. So I think the thing is, and I think what's so fun about working with some of these disorders is that you can get very creative in helping somebody progress to a functional goal.
Right.
So we talked about that graded exposure and fun, creative ways to get there. So I really like that. We also had a case that was submitted with blepharospasm,
So interesting.
which is also very interesting. We don't do a lot of eye muscle training therapy. And so we talked about some ideas like just hanging upside down and different positions and the gradual progression of that. And I know actually Claire was seeing her today, so I'm interested to hear what they did, what they tried, how successful that was. And that's a big reason I really love having the private group, is kind of like we talk about these things, we kind of get excited, but then it's like, did that work? Did that not? Like, how did it go? If it didn't go well, like what's the next step? And I love that problem solving stuff. Yeah, I love that about like our team. And I think it's been really fun within the course. We had people online, and it was like we could sit there and like problem solve these cases.
Yeah.
Which I'm actually very excited to hear about. One of Michelle's case, which was somebody who had a functional movement disorder.
That was very interesting. I'm so glad you shared so much and that we were able to brainstorm together.
Yeah, she shared a lot and a lot of good insights, and I feel like, again, I learned a lot, which is always the case when you put together the course. You end up learning so much. So I think some of the biggest take-homes from the course were using a systematic approach that gets at the underlying problem. And so this is one particular way of doing it, which was with our pie chart. And we ended up taking that pie chart on a road trip, and because the journey is not a straight line in these disorders. It's got lots of curves.
So I thought that was a great point too in the course, just setting, like from day one, talking about the assessment, setting it up as an expectation that there will be setbacks and it's not going to be only upward progress. It's forward progress, but you might have dips. You will have dips. And so when you explain that to the patient and like let them know this is part of the process, there's fewer surprises and they're still on board when it happens.
Yeah, exactly. That's a huge lesson that I would say I learned the hard way. It's like you're kind of getting there and you're like, hey, yeah, we're gonna go up, and then it's like they have a big flare or a big change. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that, but that does happen
because they're living their lives outside of the clinic.
Yeah,
and they're doing other things. And
and who knows what's going to happen.
Right.
So, you know, I think the education piece was a really big take home. We practiced it a lot. We provided a lot of tools with pie charts and mountains and piggy banks to do that. And there's one other piece actually that we have available on our website for people. It's a one-page description of our dystonia program. And I actually created this to use both in the clinic myself, but then to provide physicians so they knew that I wasn't just doing massage of muscles. I think that's like a big misunderstanding of PT in general, but especially when there's overactivity of a muscle, that's kind of the general thought is like, well, let's massage and stretch it and it'll get better. And that might be like teeniest, like 1% of what we do, but it's not the big picture at all. So we created kind of an outline of what a dystonia program would be so that we can educate people on this journey that we take, how it's different from traditional therapy, how we use a graded exposure approach to promote positive neuroplasticity. And so that is available for download at our website at reactivept.com/education. So I highly recommend that if you're curious about doing this with people or just have questions, or you want to give it to your own physical therapist. It's free. Download it on our website. And our course actually is available as well. So it's recorded. If you have lots of questions about diseases like this, I think a lot of the principles, in fact, we talked about a lot of other diagnoses during the course, especially functional diagnoses. The pie chart principles, the journey, the flare-ups, the positive neuroplasticity, it applies to a lot of diagnoses as well, but that is available. And we have our next learning module coming up as well. So we're finishing the end of our fellowship. So our Schmidt fellowship goes from January to the end of December. So we have one more learning module, and it's a very popular one because people often have questions about ataxia. So Chelsea Richardson and Lauren Colgin, Chelsea, a former fellow of ours, Lauren, our fellowship coordinator, both NCS physical therapists, will be leading a really good discussion focused a lot on treatment. I know I get those questions all the time, like, should I weight this? Should I not? What is this weighted vest thing? And so that's going to be our next mini course. It's on November 7th. Those are the ones in the evenings, webinar style, that people can join. And that one is also now available on our education webpage as well. So Amy, this was fun. I love to have somebody else here. I often feel like I'm talking to myself otherwise. So everybody can say hello to Amy, newest member of the Reactive team. We're so happy that you're a part of our team.
So happy to be here. She
brings such a great experience, especially with some of these lesser known disorders. And we just see a lot of that. And I just think your experience is going to be so awesome here. So we're going to sign off for now, and we will see you next week. Bye. Bye.